It's got to stop sooner or later, doesn't it? There's only so much water in the world, and it all came down last night. 39 more days. 39 more days. Oh, yeah. All right. Regular schedule Sunday. Quarterly congregational meeting Sunday. That's it. Hey, we're living an easy life right now. So just keep in mind those two things coming up. And having said that, let's pray and jump in, all right? Father, give us a good time together tonight in your word. Encourage us with it. Help us to understand these things. We talk about life in the world you've given to us, and may we live faithfully as believers. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. All right, one of the things I've been doing the last week is going longer than I intended to. I usually try to be done at 7:30. All right? So how many of you want to bet I'll be done by 7:30 tonight? One? If you don't bet. All right. There we go. Been talking about tough questions. Tonight's tough question is gambling. So we're gonna figure out. Pastor Stephen, he's betting. He already failed. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow. All right, so talk about these tough questions, and gambling is the one we're gonna talk about tonight. So I read this interesting article, the Atlantic magazine. The guy wrote it probably a month, 6 weeks ago now, and so Atlantic, he's a writer for the magazine, and they gave him $10,000 to gamble over the NFL season. They would cover $10,000 of his gambling and split the winnings with him if he had any, right? So he took this $10,000 and began to learn gambling and sports betting and all the different ways you can do it and all the different things you can do. And it's a long-form article. I mean, it's really fascinating. And at the end of his conclusion was it changed so much about his life. It disturbed his life because of the, you can't watch sports the same way anymore. You just can't. Right? There's so much going on, and then you're trying to figure out, am I up, am I down? All these things, it changed everything about him. And gambling is increasingly common. Since 2018, this author says, more than $500 billion has been wagered on sports. That's just sports. That's not everything else. $500 billion. If my math is correct, that's more than 500 billion. So I don't know what sounds more impressive, $500 billion or 500 billion. That's a lot of money on sports. The primary target range of gamblers is usually men. Not always, but usually men. Usually young men. About 50% of men ages 18 to 49 have an online sports betting account. I'm not one of them, but I'm also not between 18 and 49. So, now it's interesting that you can't watch a sporting event without seeing ads for gambling, right? They're major advertisers for sports, and it affects everything in them. Everything about sports is affected. And how many? I don't know. Many of you. Maybe you're not into sports. I'll get to you in a minute if you're not into sports. All right. But one of the things, how many of you have heard people? Maybe you're watching the end of a game and a certain call is made, and you're like, "Oh, the officials got to be, doing this for the bettors or the gamblers or the whatever." Right? It is so prevalent in our society. It's all over the place. Lotteries, the lottery, right? Lottery tickets, cheap. If you buy them one at a time. And then they start adding up, right? Cheap games with lots of upside. Casinos, right? And in the casino, you have all sorts of different games you can play in the casinos. Why do you think casinos look really nice? Because the house always wins, right? Home poker games. Just a bunch of friends sitting around, right? And now there are prediction. Ever hear of prediction markets? Right? You can bet on just about everything in the world. Now here's some of the questions we ask. Is gambling a problem? All right, and that's what we would say. Okay, and essentially because we can look at it for me individually. Do I have a problem gambling? I accidentally gambled one time in life. I say accidentally. I was playing golf one time down in Toledo at Maumee Bay State Park, and I show up there. I was by myself, and they put me with a couple guys, and turned out on hole 18, I found out we were playing a $2 Nassau, and I didn't know it. Fortunately, I won, so I walked away with $4. $2 Nassau's, 2 on the front 9, $2 on the back 9, and $2 for the whole match, $6 total, and I won. I had no idea, and it's great because I had no money in my pocket. And one famous golfer from a previous generation said the definition of pressure is playing $2 Nassau with no money in your pocket. And so I accidentally did it one time. I do confess that if I'm walking down the street and I see a lottery ticket on the ground, I do pick it up, just in case it's a winner. But I don't buy them. But is it a problem? It's a huge problem in our society. I'll tell you why in a few minutes. Is it now? Careful how you answer this. Okay, some of you you'll be ready to chime in. All right, is it a sin to gamble? All right. Is it a sin? Is it a matter of Christian liberty? Is it unwise? Is it a legitimate form of entertainment for a Christian or for anybody else? Now here's when we start asking these kinds of questions, I will tell you right now, not everybody answers these questions the same way. That guy says, of course I don't have a problem. Been doing it for years. If I had a problem, it would have shown up by now. Right? So not every believer, not every Christian answers these questions the same way. By the way, in the world outside the church, the social sciences, right? Gambling addiction, huge thing. Number one state for gambling in the U.S. is Nevada. Unsurprisingly, $15 billion a year. You know how much money Nevada puts towards gambling addiction? $2 million. A $15 billion problem they're throwing $2 million a year at. It's nothing. And yet, why are they putting $2 million a year at it? Because even they know it's a problem. Right? And you can hear that. You'll hear if you listen to the radio. Does anybody ever listen to radio anymore? But you hear radio, advertisements for this betting site or this betting app or whatever. And at the end, there's this tagline about if you have a problem gambling, call this number, right? Because even outside the church, people understand there are some problems with it. So let's ask this question: what is gambling? Gambling is staking money on an outcome largely governed by chance with the intent of personal gain at another's loss. All right? It is staking money on an outcome largely governed by chance with the intent of personal gain at another's loss. So something valuable is played. We talk about money, right? But maybe you've heard of stories of people who ran out of money, so they bet a pocket watch or something else of value. Right? It doesn't have to be money, but it's something of value, and it's placed at risk. And in that game, somebody else puts something on the table, and you prize that thing. You want that thing that comes from them, right? There's an element of chance, right? One of the key things in gambling is there's an element of chance outside of your control. Now here's where again when I the one time I gambled on golf, it was an accident. I didn't know it. But the one thing about gambling at golf is you have some way of controlling the outcome. It's not totally a game of chance. All right, and that's why it's a skill. All right, I'm not saying you should do it. I don't do it. All right, some of you I'd be willing to do it. I'll take your money all day long. Some of you I would not be willing to do it. Unless we get the handicaps right? But there's a way in that of evening that out, right? But something belongs to somebody else. There's an element of chance in it. the clip came off of this. Sorry. And something of value changes hands. Something's won or lost. Interesting, in gambling, nothing of value is actually created. Right? It's not like a business where you create something of value you can sell. It's like in a business, oftentimes starting a business, you take a risk. I'm going to start the business. I'm going to take a risk, but you're doing that to produce something of value that somebody else will give you money in exchange for something. That's not gambling. That's living, right? That's living. So these are, we call it legalized gaming now. I guess gambling, leaving out the BL sounds a little better. We just call it gaming instead of gambling. It sounds a little different, but that's what it's called. Prediction markets. There's all kinds of ways that you can gamble. All kinds of things you can gamble on. Do you remember a few weeks ago when the current military conflict, war, whatever you want to call it, in the Middle East started? And there were people betting on various aspects of that. I'm telling you, you can gamble on anything these days. All right? So it's all over the place. What is the problem? What is the problem? All right, number one, it's size. It's a huge thing. 57%, I'm just going to run through some statistics. 57% of U.S. adults. That means probably close to 20 people in this room. All right. Now, maybe this isn't quite the sample size we're looking for, right? I'm going to place some hope in that tonight, right? 57% of U.S. adults have at one time or another gambled in some way. 134 million people visited casinos in 2025. 134 million people. 150 billion spent on sports wagering in 2024. 2.5 million with severe problems, 8 million with moderate issues. Men are more susceptible to women. Why are men more susceptible to women, particularly young men? They like risk. It's the rush of it. They like the risk of it. And then they have to pay their debts. All right, so they gamble more. Interesting, there's one online app. In the last 10 months prior to this article being written that I'm referring to, in the last 10 months, the number of women with accounts had gone from 13% to 26%. The number of women gambling doubled on that app, doubled in just 10 months. So it's not just a men's thing, it's a women's thing as well. 27% wager at least $500 a month. 27% of those who gamble at least $500 a month. Now, it's a huge thing. It's all over, and it's a huge thing. Number two, it's ease. It's a convenient thing. All right, you used to have to go somewhere. You used to have to go to Vegas or go to a reservation somewhere or downtown Detroit. You used to have to go somewhere to do it. Some seedy part of town if you wanted to go to those kind of gambling establishments, right? Then you got some more prevalent. It's easier to get to. Now you can gamble on an app. 81% of gamblers do it on their phones. It's a huge thing, and it's so easy to do. While I'm teaching here tonight, you can download an app on your phone and you can gamble on whether or not 7:30 is the time I'm going to be done. Right? It's so convenient, and things that are convenient become popular because you don't have to go out of your way to do it. You don't even have to get off your couch. You're sitting there watching a ball game. You can be placing bets while you're watching the ball game and watching the odds go up and down on things. Apparently, I'm not big into awards shows, the TV award shows and stuff, but apparently you can gamble on what color dresses particular people are going to. It's all over the place. It's huge. It's convenient. It's message. It's a convincing thing. It's convincing. I mean, think about this. The message it sends is, you could have so much more. I mean, you pass by and see the jackpot, the whatever they call it, the big ticket jackpot thing. I can't remember what they call it now. The Mega Millions, yeah. There you go. Hopefully that wasn't a confession. No, but you go down, it's all over the place, and say, man, can you imagine what it'd be like to have that amount of money? And you can buy a ticket for a couple bucks. You can buy 10 tickets for just a little bit of money, but imagine the return you get on it. You can win. You know what I've quoted this before. You know what they say about the lottery, right? It's a tax on people who are bad at math, right? your chances of winning are pretty low. There's somebody calling me who knows what I'm doing right now. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Who was betting my phone would ring during the... You can be set for life. You never have to work again. And people believe this. I mean, certainly you would tithe off the winnings, right? There are some pastors who will not accept winnings off of lottery money. I ask no questions for my conscience sake. But if you win the lottery, tithe. But it's convincing, right? And people who get involved in gambling go through so many mental hoops to justify it. Not because the math is in their favor, not because the odds are in their favor, but because somebody's got it. I remember growing up, my pastor's son, we were good friends. He's a year older than I am, and we were really good friends. And he always, this was back in the days of Publishers Clearinghouse. And he would always send it in. We were in high school at the time. He always sent it in. He said, somebody's going to win. Might as well be me. But that's the mentality people have. We can win this. It's convincing to us. The danger of it, it's addictive. 75% of problem gamblers play slot machines. 81% play online apps. 96% of online gamblers lose money. And they keep going back for more. And once you've lost, what do you have to do? Make it up. And it's the next roll. It's the next deal. It's the next game. You got to go down. And that's what the article in the Atlantic that I was talking about, that I opened up with, the article in the Atlantic, I was talking about, once you see that, and he wasn't even gambling with his own money. But once you see that negative balance, like, oh, I got to make it up. I got to get it back. And you take bigger and bigger risks. It's an addictive thing. Nearly 1/3 of U.S. bettors have debt that's attributed to gambling. They miss car payments, they miss house payments, all kinds of problems because of it. Well, it's addictive. And again, go back to the men, young men. They like risk. They think they're invulnerable. They get in over their heads, and then they start borrowing somebody else's money, and start. Why? Because I got to get it back. I promise I'll get it back to you because I'm going to win this one. Like most addictions, gambling leads to problems such as family neglect, chemical abuse, theft, organized crime, deception. They spend money that's needed other places for food, for clothing, for their families. And the societal cost of gambling is huge, right? And here's the reality, as I said a few moments ago, even those outside the church know this. This up till this point, I haven't really addressed things from the Bible. I'm getting there for those of you who are like, are we ever getting the Bible? We are. All right, so brace yourself. But here's the reality is that it is an addictive thing, and the societal costs of it are huge. Societal costs are huge. It's foolishness. It's an unpredictable thing. It's a game of chance. And some people do it for that reason. It's just the fun of the chance. Like we have a die here, and you got 6 numbers. I'll pick one, you pick the one, and let's see who wins. And then but it's a total game of chance, unless it's rigged. And there are ways that gamblers rig games. I think I told you a story years ago at my former church. Somebody came to church and talking to her, I asked her where she worked. I heard GM, and I thought, like the automotive company. Turns out it was MGM she worked for. She was a dealer. She said, I would never gamble because she knows what it's like. And you've seen people do that. right? It's a total game of chance. Yeah, you can count cards. There are ways to do it, right? There's science involved in it. There are people who figured it out. Most people haven't. It's unpredictable. Imagine staking hundreds or thousands of dollars on officials in a basketball game or a football game. Or a coach who, at the end of the game, decides to take a knee rather than to kick a field goal that would have covered the spread. It's totally unpredictable. One thing I try to remind myself and try to remind others of, particularly my kids, my boys, don't put your life in somebody else's hands. Right? Gambling, you're putting your life in somebody else's hands. It's foolishness. It's so unpredictable. And interesting, we talk a lot about sports betting. It's all over the place, but a lot of places have particular rules about gambling. And sports leagues historically have banned betting. How many remember the Chicago Black Sox? Right? Or at least the story. Most of you probably weren't around in 1919. Mr. Beale, close. Close would be the not that far back. But you remember the story about my hometown, Shoeless Joe Jackson. 8 Men Out was the movie. Those of you that are interested in baseball, but banned for life based on the accusation of gambling. Probably true. Although Shoeless Joe Jackson, I'm a defender of Shoeless Joe. He was not a part of that, but he got banned from baseball anyway. Pete Rose, remember Pete Rose? Banned for life. And it's really controversial because a lot of people think Pete Rose was the best baseball player ever. Not even in the top 20, not in the top 30. I'm not a Pete Rose fan. But the excuse people made, think about this, the excuse people made, well, he only bet on his own team to win. What's wrong with that? Is that convincing to you? What about the games he didn't bet on? What was he saying about those? He didn't think he was going to win? Right? So there's all kinds of things going on, and it's you put your life in somebody else's hands. It's unpredictable. Some people have likened it, and just as some people are like, well, how's that different than the stock market? It's a lot different in almost all cases, unless you're day trading, just kind of throwing a dart at the board. But so why? Because in gambling, it's chance, right? Investing in the stock market, or investing in a home or a car, you can actually do some research and say, is this a company? Is this something? And investing, as a general rule, everybody wins. All right? You and I are not competing. I have 50 shares of stock and you got 50, and if I win, I get your 50. No, if the stock price goes up, we all win. It's not a zero-sum game, and that's in gambling. Remember, gambling is you're trying to profit when somebody else loses. In investing, everybody profits together. It's a total, and you can do the research. If you're really smart, you can count cards. And there are various ways, and there's some interesting documentaries on how people have done that. I'm not that smart, and that would take way more than I want to put into it. But most people don't do that, right? So it's a big difference in those kinds of things. A lot of people, they see gambling as a way to make it big. What should we think about it? All right, how should we think? Well, gambling is an attempt to short circuit or avoid God's method of money. How is it that God ordained the world to work in terms of money and food and shelter and clothing and basic needs of human life? How did God ordain the world to work? The answer is by work. Right? In the Garden of Eden, when God created Adam and Eve, long before their sin in the world, what was Adam supposed to do? Till the ground and take care of it and keep it so that he would have food. That's what he was supposed to be doing. All right? That is God's plan. In Genesis, in 2 Thessalonians 3, he who does not work should not eat. Why? Because our basic needs of life are to be provided by the means of work that God has given to us. Let him that stole steal no more, but let him labor, working with his hands that which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. Right? So there's a sense in which we are to work in order to have stuff. And working doesn't involve running down to the corner store and getting your lottery ticket. right? So work, and I mentioned about Genesis too, because work was before the fall. Work is not part of the curse. Work is hard because of the curse. But work was not a part of it. God ordained that mankind should work when there was no sin in the world. And if Adam and Eve had never sinned, you know what we would do? We would still be working, because that is God's ordained means by which we are to live life. And gambling just attempts to short circuit that. I don't want to work to get this money. I'll buy a ticket, place a wager, play a game, whatever it is. Okay? The Bible teaches that the benefits of disciplined work habits and thrift and prudence, that hard work brings reward. That the plans of the diligent lead to advantage. That in all labor there is profit. All right? So the Bible God designed the world to work that way. Gambling is trying to short circuit that. It destroys the work ethic. Destroys the work ethic. Gambling shows covetousness and discontentment with God's work in your life. Covetousness, the 10th commandment, that one that's a little bit hard to measure at times, right? Right? Do not covet your neighbor's house, anything he has, right? Covetousness is an inordinate or a wrong desire to possess something that isn't yours. It's to lust after, want more, greediness. And it's a negative connotation, right? Gambling is a form of covetousness. I want something. I don't want to give something in exchange for it. I don't want to exchange something of value. I just want to take. Now again, think about a normal transaction. You run down to McDonald's, that may in itself be a gamble, particularly if you want ice cream. The machine's probably not working. Odds are. Yeah. But you exchange something of value you have in exchange for something of value they have. So you give them your $10, you get your Big Mac meal. I don't know, can you get a Big Mac meal for $10 now? It's higher than that, isn't it? It's gone way up, right? But you're trading something of value to get something of value. The whole idea of gambling is I want what you have, but I don't want to give you anything for it. So let's just let's just make it on the roll of the dice or the draw of a card. Right? So it shows a discontent. In Jesus, in Luke chapter 12, he says, "Be on your guard against all forms of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." Be wary of greed. Be wary of wanting to get things without having to put forth the God-ordained effort to get those things. Keep your lives, Hebrews 13, keep your lives free from the love of money. Be content with what you have. Because God has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Again, gambling is a discontentment with God. Like I go out and work for a living, and I'm not satisfied with what God has given me through that job. And so rather than go get another job, I'll play the cards. I'll bet on it. Okay? Philippians 4, not that I speak from one, I've learned and will be content in whatever circumstances I am. Gambling is connected to a lack of contentment. Okay? Gambling shows a disregard of stewardship. The love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. Gambling is a zero-sum game. For you to win, somebody else has to lose. All right? It's not like a normal transaction where we can both win. I give you $5, you give me a hamburger. We both win. You get the $5, I get the hamburger. And by the way, there's a value there, right? There's a perceived value. How many of you would pay $50 for a Big Mac meal? The value's not there, right? It's not worth $50. I'm not that hungry. Right? And so all through life we're making value judgments and exchanging on what we're going to exchange what I have for. Right? Have you ever, any of you do any flea markets shopping? Right? And you're trying to negotiate that value. You know, you say it's worth that, I say it's worth this. Where can we meet that we both feel like we got a good deal. All right? But in gambling, or disregarding that equal exchange, right? We're disregarding it. It's poor stewardship. In gambling, there's no long-term value created. There's no goods or services, unless you're the house, in which case you're getting some stuff for it, and you're getting some value out of it. All right? Wealth changes hands. But what we have to understand is life is about more than accumulating things. It's about more. God has called us to be good stewards of our money. What's the best thing we could do with our money? All right? And so that stewardship should lead us to think carefully about what we do with the money God has given to us. Gambling exposes our hearts to danger. Or maybe it just exposes your heart in terms of what is already really there. Go back to what I said a moment ago, the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. I didn't say that, right? Paul said that, 1 Timothy chapter 6, when he warns us about money. There are some who gamble just for the thrill, just for the risk, right? But most people see some sort of end game, at least I'll get enough to pay for my parking, or get enough to cover my dinner, or whatever it is. You're looking for something. 1 Timothy chapter 6. The love of money is the root of all sorts of evil, and some by longing for it have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves through with many griefs. You ever thought of gambling as a knife to pierce because you want that? But flee from these things, you man of God. Flee from these things. Flee from that covetousness that exposes your hearts to danger. You know what? Say, well, it's only $2 this time. But what if it becomes more, right? It exposes you to danger. Godliness with contentment is a means of great gain. Godliness is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. We have brought nothing into the world, and we cannot carry anything out of it. We have food and covering. With these we should be content. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and snare and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge men into ruin and destruction. It exposes us to danger. How do we solve these problems? We ask some questions. Does this cultivate contentment or discontentment? Does it cultivate contentment or discontent? When I do this game of whatever sort it is, what's it doing to me? Is it increasing my contentment in what God has given to me? Or is it increasing discontentment? Is it increasing trust in God or trust in luck? Again, we use the word luck loosely there. I think everything is, part of God's. I don't understand all that. But face it, when you shuffle the deck, 6, 7, 8 times, the card that's on the top, unless you're a card mechanic, and there are some really impressive ones who can really do some things with cards. And there's a guy on YouTube, I forget his name, Richard something. Man, it's impressive to watch him deal cards. And he does this thing, he's a blind guy. And he shuffles cards, and he's doing all this stuff while he's talking to it. He does this thing where he shuffles a deck of cards with one hand and then cuts them like an actual riffle shuffle with one, does in his hand. So never play cards with a guy who shuffles with one hand. Right? There's people, and when he deals it out, and he'll deal it all out. It's kind of, if you watch him, it's really interesting. Richard Turner's his name. So if you're ever tempted to play cards, watch that, and you will never play cards for money, because somebody's going to be doing that to you, and somehow he always ends up with the aces. Okay? What are you trusting in? Are we trusting God, or are we trusting in luck? Does this help or hinder generosity? I mean, many people, I'm going to get more money so I can give more away. Maybe. Maybe not. Remember, what is going on in our hearts? Would I gladly explain this habit to Christ himself? Again, just how should we solve these problems? We solve these problems by thinking about these kinds of things. Could this cause another believer to stumble. Now here's what I want to encourage you with as you think about these things. There is so much in our lives when we enter into areas like this. Is it entertainment among friends for a couple of bucks? I mean, I told you, I gambled on golf one time. I don't think I've ever done it since that I recall. Okay, and that time was an accident. It's seriously, I had no idea we were playing for money until the 18th green. The guy hands me $4. Right? Back then you could buy a Big Mac meal for $4. That's how long ago that was. So I got my dinner out of it. Is it sin to play a $2 guard game? Are you going to hell because you do it? Some people say, oh yeah, it is, absolutely. Now, is it sin to take $10 down to the casino and spend your $10 and be done? As opposed to taking $10 to the movie theater. At least if you go to the casino, you got a chance of getting it back. A small one. A really small one. All right, so now there's a part of me that would love to stand here and tell you, don't gamble. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stand here and tell you, don't gamble. Okay? I think, for all these reasons I talked about, it is a disregard of it's an attempt to short circuit God's plan. But your $2 poker game probably isn't the way that you're going to be able to leave your job, right? It shows covetousness and discontentment, but again, your $2 game probably isn't in that category. Disregard of stewardship. Most of us probably over the course of a month lose $2 out of our pocket, dropping it on the ground somewhere. Right? And most of us could come up with $2 to gamble in the parking lot if we just walk through walk through the Meyer parking lot. You can find your $2 there, right? Here's what I'm saying. I believe that there are some Christians who might say, you know what, I'm not convinced this is sin. Okay? Now here's what I think, and this is where at times I get in trouble for saying stuff like this, so brace yourself. Honestly, I think you should not do it. I think you should not do it. I don't think there's any need to. But I also don't believe that the Bible gives me the authority to demand that you not do it. Okay? But let me close with two quotes. And by the way, a lot of this I borrowed, but this is from a guy named Costi Hinn, who recently did a podcast and a little article on gambling. Here's what he says. Gambling trains the heart to expect gain without faithfulness. What is it doing to you? What is it doing to you? What is it doing to us? Right? What's it doing to our heart? The issue is not whether you can win. It's what you are training your heart to love. And at the heart of all this, no pun intended, is what's going on in our hearts. Am I trying to short circuit God's plan for life? Am I trying to short circuit God's plan for life? For money? Am I trying to get around the God-ordained plan for how I should provide for my family? Am I discontent with what God's doing? What is going on in my heart? What is going on in my heart? Is there this lust for money? This thrill of the ride kind of thing? This risk-taking thrill? Okay. My encouragement for us in all this is to say this. God has called us to work for the means by which we support our families. But nobody here gets a free pass on that, right? Some of you are retired. You spent your years working and you saved up so that now you don't have to. At least go to a job every day. You probably still up working a lot, right? when the church calls you and says, hey, we got something to do, and you show up and get it done, right? All right. But what is our heart being trained? Is my heart being trained to love God's means by which I provide for my family, or is my heart being trained to love some other means? All right? Be careful about what's going on in your heart. Be content with what God has given. Be content with the God-ordained means of doing it. 7:26. I know Dave's going home poor tonight because he took the over. All right. Seriously, think carefully about what's going on in the heart. The love of the money is the root of all sorts of evil. And love starts right here with I can get it without having to work for it. Guard your heart against covetousness. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of things he possesses. Let's close there. There are prayer sheets here. I think there's some on the back table out there. Grab some prayer sheets, grab some people, and pray tonight. And see you Sunday, 9:30, 10:30. And don't forget the quarterly congregational meeting. All right, let's pray. Father, in Jesus' name, we come believing you've given us your word. You've given us the way to live life. Guard our hearts against covetousness. Guard our hearts against foolishness, against the things that would entice us away from you, the things that would entice us to become addicted and trapped in the things of this current age. Our life does not consist in the abundance of things we possess, and so free us from the obsessive need to keep going after those things. Help us to be content with you, with the way you're working our life, with the life you've called us to live. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. Thanks for being here. Good to see you. Prayer sheets here and there.